Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Yolanda Melody. Today I want to do a really inspiring video and tell the story of how my dad manifested an E-Type Jaguar. Yes, you heard correctly. Specifically, a white V12 convertible with a personalised reg plate. All will be revealed by the end of this video of how this actually happened. But I first want to preface this by saying, if you are new to manifestation or hearing about it, if you have any doubts as to whether or not this is actually a legitimate thing that happens, let me tell you straight up now, magical things can happen if you put your mind to it. And obviously the other day I had to recap on this story with my dad and just get all of the facts straight, etc. But it really uplifted me hearing how this story unfolded, because I was quite young when this actually happened. But without blabbing on, let's just get into it. So right from an early age, when my dad was very young, ever since he saw the E-Type Jaguar, he fell absolutely head over heels for it. And I know that there's so many other, mainly men out there, that absolutely adore classic cars. People are absolutely fanatical about them. They cost a lot of money. And the way that my dad described the wanting for this car, it was like a dream to him. It was something that when he was younger, he just used to think about it all the time and think, one day I will have an E-Type Jaguar. And a key note in this story, it was specifically a white convertible V12. Now, a lot of people in the spiritual community, when they talk about manifestation, they say you should always be specific about what you want. When my dad was younger, there wasn't any YouTube videos or tutorials on how to manifest things. It was kind of like an intuitive feeling that he just had. And this is something to note. Our spirituality and our connection to the divine is naturally inbuilt into us. It's just that up until recently, there has been very few ways to actually confirm these intuitive feelings that we have. Anyway, as with most people, when you desire something so much and you don't get it straight away, eventually you start to either lose hope, or for the sake of your own mental state, you just choose to stop thinking about it because sometimes it can get too much. So my dad forgot about it for a while and he put his focus into other things. Years and years later, my mom and dad were in a financial position to potentially buy an E-Type. And not to go into the figures exactly, they were kind of in a financial position to buy it, but they needed to find one that was an absolute bargain. So after many discussions, one finally came up on the market at a decent price. Retrospectively, it was kind of out of budget, but it was still heavily discounted compared to what most people would sell an E-Type for. And the one that came up was a white convertible V12. So they went to a garage to see the E-Type and they were able to actually see it in the flesh. They were able to touch it. My mom and dad sat in the E-Type and imagined what it would be like to own it. This is all relevant. However, things didn't quite work out with that deal. I don't know why, but for some reason, for the sake of such a small difference in money, the dealer was not willing to budge or negotiate the price down. They were selling it at that price. There was no room for bartering. And I think that my mom must have had a funny feeling about the deal. Something just wasn't quite right. So they walked away from the dealership completely empty-handed. Mom was a little bit disappointed, but my dad turned to her and he said these words: "Forget about that one. I bet one will come up that's better, that's half the price, and we'll love it more." Around this time, eBay was quite new, or at least it was to mom and dad. They had only just set up an eBay account, they had zero feedback, they were total newbies, and in the world of eBay, people don't really like to sell to people who don't have that much feedback, or any at all. So after my dad said, "Don't worry, I bet we'll find one that's better, for half the price, and we'll love it more," within the space of about 20 minutes, my dad logged onto eBay and right at the top was their dream E-Type. Not only was it a white V12 convertible, but it also had a personalised license plate with IO on it. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, my entire brand is around my name and IO, because my name is Yolanda and it begins with an IO. In fact, my logo is IO. Bearing in mind also that all of this had happened within the space of about an hour. They'd been to see this other car. It wasn't the right one, it wasn't at the right price, and then this one turns up on eBay for half the price that the previous dealership were selling theirs for. It was like a miracle. It was unheard of for this car to be selling at this price, right? So immediately my dad put a bid on this car, he emailed the seller, and they exchanged quite a few emails before the car was finally sold to them. So you guys are probably thinking, well, it's not really manifesting if you're buying it. But hold on. There's a few contributing factors to this. One is that this E-Type was sold for half the price that the previous dealership was selling it for. This car could have gone for way more than it did. Secondly, the interest in this car from watchers and other bidders was immense. I think there was a total of at least 91 watchers on the car. The seller was getting an influx of other emails from other people wanting this car. And another point is that out of all the people that she chose to sell the car to, it wasn't the highest bidder. My mum and dad actually won this car for way less than what other people were asking. In fact, a lot of people had messaged offering twice the money, and yet for some reason the seller just didn't want to sell to them. And another factor is that my parents had zero feedback. They could have been trolls. They could have been scammers, you know? And yet with all these things involved that were going against the odds, somehow the seller just wanted to sell to us. So why? Well, it didn't make sense to me either until I read the email conversations between my dad and the seller. And funnily enough, my dad actually has a drawer dedicated to everything to do with the E-Type, and he actually printed out the email correspondence with the seller and laminated it. And there's about 3 pages worth, double-sided, and as I read through the correspondence, it all started to make sense. In fact, the way that it uncovers is actually quite magical. The way that my dad was with the seller was very different to what the other bidders were being like. This lady had an influx of messages that were all very rushy, desperate. Some of them were borderline aggressive. There was such desperation in some of these emails that she was getting, and it was, I believe, giving her a lot of anxiety. And I feel as if this car was her baby and she wasn't willing to just give it to anyone. My dad, on the other hand, has got a very good way of being. He's very patient, he's very calm, he's not pushy. He already had the belief in his mind that that car was going to be his, that was the car. And funnily enough, upon reading the emails, it seemed that the seller also shared that same belief. She wanted the car to specifically go to my mom and dad. And I believe this is a concrete example of how manifestation works. Yes, you have to put the action in, but if your energy is right, you will attract what you want. This seller had never met my parents, and there was all these contributing factors where she could have sold the car for so much more money to someone who had feedback, but she didn't want to. Something was telling her that the right thing to do was to sell to my parents. I believe that she was a very spiritual person. In fact, she sent us a Christmas card literally this year. We're still friends with her and her husband. In fact, from that deal, what also grew was a beautiful friendship. And apparently she watches my YouTube videos, so hi! I want to try and keep her anonymity because I haven't asked permission to mention her in this story. So yeah, this is a story about how we manifested the E-Type Jaguar. I hope that this brought you some inspiration and showed you that good things can happen. Let me know if you want to hear any more crazy manifestation stories, because I have a lot of them. I've just been manifesting all types of crazy shit all the time. And also don't forget to comment down below, leave me a like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Love you, bye!